be talking about holes. And that is because I've been looking at lots of potholes on the road, which I'm sure lots of you have. What's going on with the potholes? Are you practically falling into volcanic holes every time you go onto a road? I am. And actually, it's really dangerous if you're cycling at the moment. There's so many holes in our roads. And this is what got me thinking about holes in literature, because I was getting a bit of an obsession with all the holes that I keep nearly falling into and actually having terrible accidents, getting a flat tire, all because of the bloomin' potholes. So I started thinking about holes in books. And one of my favourite holy books, in a literal sense, is the book about Moomin, Mymble and Little My, which actually does have real holes in it. And it's a really beautiful piece of design, this book, even when you look at it the wrong way round. Sorry, Instagram people, still haven't worked out how to flip around my screen. So frustrating. Do tell me there's an easy way. So look, this book is literally full of holes, and it's really gorgeously, beautifully illustrated, and not just beautifully illustrated, but also full of fabulous words. You all know me and my love for Moomins. Um, but this book is an absolute classic, and it's a really good story. The book about Moomin, Mymble and Little My. I'll just read you a tiny bit. It's written in poetry. It is a children's book, but as with all the Moomin books, it's great for everyone. Tracy, hi. Good to see you. Lovely to see you, Kate and Connie. Um, so I'll just read you a little bit. Here's little Moomin Troll, none other, hurrying home with milk for mother. Quick, Moomin Troll, it's nearly night. Run home while there's a bit of light. Don't hang around in woods like these. Strange creatures lurk between the trees. The wind begins to howl and hiss. Now guess what happens after this? You get the vibe. This is a page turner of a book, and it is literally full of holes just because of the way it's designed. So that was the first one that came to mind. Then another fantastic book for younger folk, which is also about holes, is this graphic novel. While we're on the theme of illustrated books, so Into the Volcano by Don Wood is a book that goes deep down into the hole in the earth, which is in the form of a volcano. And as you can see, it's very richly and gorgeously illustrated. It's a very exciting story. It's got fire, lava, lakes, it's got underground rivers. It's pretty much non-stop adventure, and it's a very exciting book about going down under the surface of the earth. And I thoroughly recommend it as a great read. On the back it says, a gripping, gorgeously drawn adventure story that captures the terrible beauty and danger of life on the volcano's edge. So that's kind of a young adult book, which I would very much recommend. Um, so many exciting holy books to mention, but I would love to know if you have any particular favourite holy books, books with holes in them. Could be literal holes, could be metaphorical holes. Um, there is an amazing book by A.M. Holmes. Thank you, Kate, for reminding me about that, which I had momentarily forgotten about, which is called This Book Will Save Your Life. And it has an enormous pothole. Would you call it a pothole? Which opens up in the middle of the book and has a big effect on our hero. Susan and I, in the novel Cure, actually wrote about this book, but it was more Susan's baby, that book, the A.M. Holmes, than mine. which is why I did not remember it when I first started thinking about holes. But I'm going to read you our entry about holes because, sorry, about that book, which relates to holes, because I think it's a really fun entry and it's actually about two books, so we will have a slight diversion as well. So in the novel Cure, we have an ailment, which is superhero wishing you were a. So, wishing you were a superhero. Well, don't tell us. Sorry, it's actually quite hard to see in this light at my age. Wait, don't tell us. You imagine the red and blue lycra. You wonder which superpower you'd choose. Just a bit of you still believes in Wonder Woman's bullet-stopping tiara, her powers of telepathy, and her typing speed, 160 words per minute, if you're curious. You don't completely write off the possibility that you might one day own something similar, if not identical, to Batman's Batmobile. And occasionally, when you go about your daily life, you imagine whoosh, bam, kaboom, or pizzow in little bubbles over your head. Is anyone relating to that? Wishing you were a superhero. Um, Hi, Barney. Lovely to have you here this evening. Holes by Louis Sachar. We're going to come to that in a minute because that is the ultimate holy book, the Book of Holes. Back to superheroes. Well, that's okay. Some children grow out of it. You didn't. You'll have already read and adored The Amazing Adventures of Cavalier and Clay, Michael Chabon's epic tale of comic book makers Joseph Cavalier and Sammy Clay, riding the wave of the golden age of comic books. The duo create a series of superheroes, beginning with the escapist who comes to the rescue of those who toil in the chains of tyranny and injustice in 1939. This is a diversion from holes in literature, but it's a brilliant book, Cavalier and Clay, that you should definitely read if you have not already done so. They are fighting the war against Hitler with pen and ink. Joe and Sammy do not become superheroes themselves, though, and if you're looking for a how-to literary mentor, we know someone who does. That is Richard Novak. In A.M. Holmes' book, This Book Will Save Your Life, she was left emotionally numb by a divorce 13 years ago, and he left a 4-year-old son, Ben, behind in New York when he moved to California. His life now represents everything artificial about modern day LA. He lives in a glass box on a canyon wall, splendidly sealed from the world, with a noise cancelling headset, and interacting only with his housekeeper, his nutritionist, his masseur, and his personal trainer. One day, he starts to feel again, beginning with an overwhelming and undiagnosable physical pain, and gradually, people start coming into his life. Anil, the owner of the donut shop, Cynthia, the put upon housewife, and his startlingly sexy movie star neighbour, Tad. The next thing he knows, he's breaking his rules drinking coffee. Real coffee? Asks his nutritionist, aghast. With regular milk? Snacking on donuts, bursting into tears, taking naps, and he wants to be more, do more, to be heroic, larger than life, rescue people from burning buildings, leap over rooftops, be a superhero, in other words. Richard's various heroic acts, one of which involves our favourite highway car chase in literature, will have you aglow with superhero awe. It takes his quack doctor, Lusardi, to point out that maybe all this saving of other people is really about saving himself. When his son Ben, now 17, finally pitches up on his doorstep, Richard is ready to try and rescue the most important relationship of all. The truth is, you can't become a superhero if you haven't suffered first. Richard notices the needs of others, but it's his desperate need to make things right with Ben and recover some of what he's lost that really drives him. If you're motivated by connecting past wrongs and improving the lives of others, you can be a superhero too. So that is the book. This Book Will Save Your Life by A.M. Holmes. which has an enormous hole in it, which is a sinkhole. That's the word that I was looking for. Suddenly, a sinkhole opens up in front of Richard Novak's house, and this gives him a lot of issues about uncertainty and obviously feeling a bit of an emotional hole at the center of his life. He is inspired to start behaving in a different way. It's a really fun book. I am a massive fan of A.M. Holmes. She's an amazing writer, and that is a great read with a massive hole in it. There's also another brilliant book of hers, which is May We Be Forgiven, which doesn't have any holes in it other than holes in people's emotional hearts. But it's a really fantastic read, and I would hugely recommend it. So I am going to move on to the aforementioned by Barney. Thank you for that. Holes by Louis Sachar, which many of you might know from the film. It's also an absolutely fantastic book. If you haven't read it, grab a copy. It's hilarious, and it's a book that makes you love onions passionately. Anyone who doesn't know a lot about onions should read this book because it tells you all about how great they are for you, for your body and your brain, and how you can pretty much live off onions. However, it's also a book very much about holes because it's about a boy, Stanley Yelnats, who is falsely accused of stealing some trainers from a very famous basketball player. And he's put into this camp where he is going to improve his behavior, supposedly. And he has to dig holes all day long with lots of other kids. And it's it's very funny, it's very sad, it's full of real and metaphorical holes, and it's a really good read. One of those reads that's certainly not just for the teenagers or even the younger kids. Kids can probably read it from about 9 or 10 up. It's great to read aloud. And actually, it was banned in some states of America because it was read aloud and was deemed unsuitable, which is a surprise because I don't see why it would be deemed unsuitable. However, I'm going to read you a little section from Holes by Louis Sachar to give you a little flavour of what a lovely, great book it is. So, quite early on in the book, Stanley Yelnats ends up in this horrible camp in the middle of the desert, um, which is a completely flat, arid plain, but it's full of enormous round holes that he and the other kids have to dig. And Stanley has been digging away, and he's been told that if he finds anything interesting in a hole, he'll have a day off. So here we are when he is just in the middle of digging. Here we go. The sun wasn't yet up, but its rays arced over the horizon and brought light to the sky. He reached down to pick up his cap, and there next to it he saw a wide, flat rock. As he put his cap on his head, he continued to look down at the rock. He picked it up. He thought he could see the shape of a fish fossilized in it. He rubbed off some dirt, and the outline of the fish became clearer. The sun peaked over the horizon, and he could actually see tiny lines where every one of the fish's bones had been. He looked at the barren land all around him. True, everyone referred to this area as the lake, but it was still hard to believe that this dry wasteland was once full of water. Then he remembered what Mr. Sir and Mr. Pendanski had both said. If he dug up anything interesting, he should report it to one of them. If the warden liked it, he would get the rest of the day off. He looked back down at the fish. He'd found his miracle. So there he is, Stanley Yelnats, sent to this hideous camp, middle of nowhere, boiling hot, arid land, desperately trying to escape any way he can. And he finds a fossil. He continued to dig, though very slowly, as he waited for the water truck. He didn't want to bring attention to his find, afraid that one of the other boys might try to take it from him. He tossed the rock face down beside his dirt pile as if it had no special value. A short while later, he saw the cloud of dirt heading across the lake. The truck stopped and the boys lined up. They always lined up in the same order, Stanley realised, no matter who got there first. X-ray was always at the front of the line. Then came armpit, squid, zigzag, magnet, and zero. Some of the best names in kids' books in this one, I have to say. Armpit, squid, magnet, zero. Stanley got to the line behind zero. He was glad to be at the back, so no one would notice the fossil. His pants had very large pockets, but the rock still made a bulge. Mr. Pendanski filled each boy's canteen until Stanley was the only one left. I found something, Stanley said, taking it out of his pocket. Mr. Pendanski reached for Stanley's canteen, but Stanley handed him the rock instead. What's this? It's a fossil, said Stanley. See the fish. Mr. Pendanski looked at it again. See, you can even see all of its little bones, said Stanley. Interesting, said Mr. Pendanski. Let me have your canteen. Stanley handed it to him. Mr. Pendanski filled it, then returned it. So, do I get the rest of the day off? What for? You know, you said if I found something interesting, the warden would give me the day off. Mr. Pendanski laughed as he gave the fossil back to Stanley. Sorry, Stanley. The warden isn't interested in fossils. Poor Stanley. He thought he'd found something interesting. He had found something interesting, but nobody else cares, and he has to carry on digging holes for probably about another 40 or 50 pages. However, we gradually discover what they're really looking for in the holes, and it all gets very exciting, and there's quite a lot of danger in those holes as well. Moving on to other exciting holy books. There's a book called A Life Full of Holes, which I don't have a copy of here, unfortunately, which is a collaboration between Dris Ben Hamid Chahadi, an illiterate North African servant and street vendor, and legendary American novelist and essayist Paul Bowles. This is a powerful story of a shepherd and petty trafficker struggling to maintain hope as he wrestles with the grim realities of daily life, which was the first novel ever written in the Arabic dialect, Moghrebi, faithfully recorded and translated into English by Bowles. So this is a pretty fascinating book, A Life Full of Holes. But frankly, they're not literal holes like the ones we've just been talking about. They are metaphorical holes. I'm now going to mention, apart from some other holes that are coming along, just checking my door. I think it's a cat trying to get in, which is always a bit terrifying. It's not actually a cat, it's a child. Possibly even more terrifying. Plot holes. Let's move on to the plot holes. Tonight is going to be a slightly shorter session than usual, by the way, because one of my children has her art GCSE tomorrow, and there's a lot of preparation going on into that. Hence my disruption, the hole in the session, rather appropriately. So yeah, it's not going to be a long one. Plot holes. There's a lot of amazingly fascinating plot holes in books, but I do think it's quite boring to talk about plot holes if you don't know the book that is being described. So I'm not going to give you lots of plot holes in detail because I think that would be a bit boring. For you listeners, it's only fun talking about plot holes when they're books that everyone knows about. So, for instance, Harry Potter, probably most people here have read, and if they haven't, they will know the films. And there's some pretty epic plot holes in those books, which a lot of people pick up on the web when you go searching for plot holes as well as potholes. Um, one of which is the time travel element. So Hermione does her amazing time travel trick um, through the whole of. Oh, now I'm having a blank on which book it is. Someone out there will remind me. But she keeps traveling in time and she keeps going back and forth so she can do extra lessons. That's why she's traveling in time. And that creates a massive plot hole because if she could do that, if she could be traveling in time, why can't that happen in lots of other situations in that magical world when they could have saved many terrible situations, saved themselves from Voldemort and so on by traveling back in time? That's one of them. Then there's also the the polyjuice potion, which means that they can actually become another person, and that happens a few times during the book. But it's one of those things again where if you think you can change into another person, why don't you do it all the time so that you can actually get away with things by pretending to be someone else? I won't go into detail, but plot holes can be quite fun to um, examine when you are thinking about such things. So, one of the ones which is interesting and which lots of you will probably know the story is in The Big Sleep by Raymond Chandler, um, who forgets to tie up a loose thread, which is in a detective story featuring Philip Marlowe, who, as I'm sure you know, is a hard drinking, fast talking private eye who's hired by an elderly man called General Sternwood to deal with a guy who's been blackmailing Sternwood's daughter. Things veer quickly out of control when the blackmailer is killed by a mysterious assailant, and the Sternwoods' car is found in the water with their chauffeur dead inside. We learn that it was the chauffeur who killed the blackmailer, but who killed the chauffeur? Possibly a second blackmailer, but the narrative offers nothing in the way of a concrete explanation. In fact, when filmmakers asked Chandler about it while they were making the movie, he said, "Damned if I know," which is a pretty great response. And there's somebody on the web called Elodie who wrote a blog all about plot holes. And thanks to Elodie for pointing that one out. There's also a very commonly pointed out plot hole in Huckleberry Finn, a classic of its time, which people get quite air-rated about because in Huckleberry Finn, almost all the editions of the book have been abridged because it was a long book by removing one chapter of the section during which Huck and Jim are rafting down the river. This chapter is known as the Raftsman Passage. While the chapter in question does indeed slow the story down, it also reveals several key points of information, notably Huck and Jim's location on the river. And then in the following chapter, Huck is suddenly aware of this information of where they are for no apparently good reason. So that is a bit of a ridiculous plot hole. But it was there because it was a long book. So maybe we might forgive such things. Plot holes are one of those things that pedantic readers love to point out, but I think we can forgive them for the sake of artistic license. Now, a few other holes to mention include Jules Verne's Journey to the Centre of the Earth, which is a classic 1864 science fiction novel. And it has been made into a film in 1974, I do believe. It is a story involving German professor Otto Leidenbruck, who believes there are volcanic tubes going towards the centre of the Earth. His nephew Axel and their guide Hans descend into the Icelandic volcano Snæfellsjökull, encountering many adventures, apology for my terrible Icelandic accent, including prehistoric animals and natural hazards, before eventually coming to the surface again in southern Italy as at the Stromboli volcano. From a scientific point of view, this story has not aged quite as well as other Verne stories, since most of his ideas about what the interior of the Earth contains have since been disproved, but it still manages to captivate audiences when regarded as a classic fantasy novel. So that's Journey to the Centre of the Earth. I can't speak to the film for the film. I wonder if anyone here has seen the 1970s film Journey to the Centre of the Earth. Give me a wave if you have and let me know if it was any good. Tempted to go and watch it just to check it out. Another really fun hole in literature, thinking of journeying to the centre of the earth, as with Jules Verne, is Edgar Rice Burroughs, who wrote a whole series of books. He's most famous for the Tarzan books, but he also wrote a huge range of books which are all about journeying under the earth. So I'm just coming to the titles of the books because there's quite a few different titles. In these books, we have a narrator who relates how traveling in the Sahara Desert has encountered a remarkable vehicle and its pilot, David Innes, who has an amazing story to tell. Edgar Rice Burroughs was actually, in a way, a little bit like Jules Verne because he did love to spin a colourful yarn. He loved prehistoric creatures. He loved going down under the earth. He loved creating little races of ant-men who Tarzan met, and so on. David Innes is a mining heir who finances the experimental iron mole, an excavating vehicle designed by his elderly inventor friend, Abner Perry. In a test run, they discover that the vehicle cannot be turned around, and it burrows 500 miles beneath the Earth's crust. That's a pretty shocking accident, some would say. Emerging into the unknown interior world of Pellucidar. In Burroughs' concept, the Earth is a hollow shell with Pellucidar as the internal surface of that shell. Pellucidar is inhabited by prehistoric creatures of all geological eras and dominated by the Mahars, a species of flying reptiles, both intelligent and civilized, but, oh, hang on a minute, which enslaves the human race of that time, who are Stone Age humans. Innes and Perry are captured by the Mahar's ape-like Sagoth servants. He does love a slightly ridiculous name. And taken with other human captives to the chief Mahar city of Phutra. Among their fellow captives are the brave Gak, the hairy one, from the country of Sari, the shifty Hooja, the sly one, and the lovely Diane the Beautiful of Amoz. David Innes, attracted to Diane the Beautiful, great name, of course, from Edgar Rice Burroughs, defends her against the unwanted attentions of Hooja, the sly one. Love all these appellations of the people. Hooja, the sly one. But due to the ignorance of local customs, she assumes he wants her as a slave, not as a friend or lover, and subsequently snubs him. Only later, after Hooja slips away from their captors in a dark tunnel and forces Diane to leave with him, does David learn from Gak the cause of their misunderstanding. And so the story goes on. So Edgar Rice Burroughs wrote a series of amazing, interesting and bizarre books which are all set underground, and they are fun to check out if you've ever been a fan of Tarzan of the Apes, which I was a massive fan of, I have to admit, in my childhood. I really wanted to be Tarzan. Then you might enjoy these as well. They're classic adventure books. They are old fashioned. They're written in an old fashioned style. They do have somewhat dubious attitudes to women, um, and I fear to other people from different countries from his own. Uh, so read them with a very big pinch of salt. But they're great adventure stories. Moving on to another book with a hole that came to mind when I first started thinking about this subject, The History of Mr. Polly by H.G. Wells, which is all about a giant metaphorical hole in Mr. Polly's life. So the book begins with a famous, excellent line. "Hole," said Mr. Polly, and then for a change, with greatly increased emphasis, "ole." He paused and then broke out with one of his big private and peculiar idioms. "Oh, beastly silly wheeze of a hole." He was sitting on a stile between two threadbare-looking fields and suffering acutely from indigestion. These are the very first lines of the book, The History of Mr. Polly by H.G. Wells, which I read at A-level, strangely enough. I don't know quite how that happened because I don't know a lot of people that had it on their curriculum. He suffered from indigestion now nearly every afternoon in his life, but as he lacked introspection, he projected the associated discomfort upon the world. Every afternoon, he discovered afresh that life as a whole and every aspect of life that presented itself was beastly. And this afternoon, lured by the delusive blueness of a sky that was blue because the wind was in the east, he had come out in the hope of snatching something of the joyousness of spring. The mysterious alchemy of mind and body refused, however, to permit any joyousness whatever in the spring. He had a little difficulty in finding his cap before he came out. He wanted his cap, the new golf cap, and Mrs. Polly must needs fish out his old soft brown felt hat. "Here's your hat," she said, in a tone of insincere encouragement. He had been routing among the piled newspapers under the kitchen dresser, and he'd turned quite hopefully and taken the thing. He put it on, but it didn't feel right. Nothing felt right. He put a trembling hand upon the crown of the thing and pressed it on his head and tried it askew to the right and then askew to the left. Then the full sense of indignity offered him came home to him. The hat masked the upper sinister quarter of his face, and he spoke with a wrathful eye regarding his wife from under the brim. In a voice thick with fury, he said, "I suppose you'd like me to wear that silly mud pie forever, eh? I tell you I won't. I'm sick of it. I'm pretty near sick of everything, come to that. Hat." So that's the history of Mr. Polly, which starts with the immortal words, "all," nasty, horrible, all. And the whole book is about Mr. Polly excavating himself from the metaphorical whole of his life. It's a strange book, but it is rather beautiful and does have hope and positivity and love in it. And Mr. Polly does find a way out of his hole. It's a really intriguing novel, quite short, which I would very much recommend. I am always very impressed going back to H.G. Wells. He's a really good read, and definitely, if you've never read any, give it a go. So, I was just thinking about another hole when reading out that passage, which is Murakami, um, in Haruki Murakami's book, The Wind Up Bird Chronicle, which is an amazing book. I did read it probably over 20 years ago, so I can't speak with great authority, but the hero does spend 3 days at the bottom of a well. He is in a literal hole, and he has all these incredible hallucinations while he's down at the bottom of that hole. Are they hallucinations, or are they dreams, or are they some kind of reality? It's a really good novel, which I would very much recommend, although it does have some horrific scenes of torture in it. So be careful if you don't like that kind of thing. It's actually pretty horrific at times. But that just came to my mind. I wonder if you have any other amazing stories with holes in them. Um, I'd just like to remind you about the gorgeousness of this book by Tove Janson, which actually does have literal holes going through the whole book. And it is one of my favourite children's books, very beautifully designed with gorgeous illustrations and full of holes, but really just as a design feature, not because she's making any comment about them. Other holes that did come into mind, vaginas. That is a topic which I will be talking about another time quite soon. So watch this space. And of course, this is the classic Holes book, which I'm sure that most of you know and love. So do read that if you never have before. And I'm going to come to an end there because I've got important things to do in terms of helping my daughter get ready for her art GCSE tomorrow. So thanks so much for joining me. Lovely to see you all. And don't forget, you can book a bibliotherapy session with me, one-to-one. Go to my website, find out how, and we can talk all about books, what books you love, what books you don't love, how you read, where you read, what you read, and how I can help you read more, get more out of your reading, and find the perfect selection of books to read at this time in your life. So check out my website, check out the novel Cure, check out Fiction Prescriptions, which is also full of fantastic reading suggestions. And do send me messages if you've got ideas about books with holes in them. Are you aware of any amazing potholes in literature? We've had sinkholes, we've had plot holes, we've had journeys to the centre of the earth, but I haven't actually had any potholes. So do tell me if you think of any that I missed out. Great to see you, and see you again next week. Next week will be on Damien Barr's Literary Salon page, so join me there. See you later. Good night.